Hey, I'm your host, Scott, Dr. Jakes Goldenfine, welcoming you to another special edition of Where'd You Get Your Funk From? This is the second of an ongoing line of episodes in which expert authoritative panelists provide their top picks in various funk music categories. We're calling this series the Jam Fans Forum. This time around, we're taking on the really fun topic of the 5 greatest funk album debuts of all time. Joining me are 3 supremely qualified and distinguished Jam fans. We welcome back music and culture journalist and liner notes master A. Scott Galloway. Welcome back, Scott.
Great to be back.
We also welcome back music scholar, author, and radio show host Ricky Vincent. Hey, Ricky.
Happy to be here again.
And our new addition for this episode is soul and funk music historian and producer of the Soul School television series, Calvin Lincoln. Welcome, Calvin.
Hey, always a pleasure.
Thank you very much to all of you for participating, and especially for keeping the funk alive. To frame our discussion, a few ground rules so everyone understands what we're doing here. Albums must contain a minimum of 3 funk tracks or 1/3 of the total playing time. Picks are not shared ahead of time, so everyone experiences these reveals together. Panelists compile alternates in case someone else names the same pick first, and we did have a few of those on the first show. We'll end up with 20 picks in total. Picks may be shared in random, unranked, or in non-chronological order, or they could be chronological. Picks may be based on more personal preference than historical context, so there's some subjectivity there, possibly. But how this works is each Jam fan panelist reveals their picks one at a time, explains why, and allows the others to react. In the interest of time, we got to limit each pick to about 5 minutes, even though we could easily spend an hour on every one of them.
Yep, that part.
Yeah, so let's get rolling, guys. Let's start off this one with Ricky. Rick, start us off on your best debut of all time. What do you got?
Oh boy, I get to go first.
Yeah, you ready or not?
Well, you see, part of the issue is what constitutes a debut. I'm wearing Jimi Hendrix, but the band the Gypsies debuted as a band. And, these things, there's a few of these because a lot of artists build their careers up and then, boom, they fall into a pocket. But these folks came out of nowhere and turned me out when I first checked this record out. So, beat everybody to the draft pick. Yeah.
Oh, well.
Yeah, I've been staring at this since 1977. I remember Funk, because they had the little Star Trek bit on there at the transport is ready and all that. And they went into that thunder. And then they said, we're not the P Funk, we're the C Funk. And at the time, I'm like, you go for it, because we didn't necessarily know who was going to dominate for the next decades. And Cameo definitely had their run, and they made their mark immediately. And they had the club hit with Rigor Mortis on there. They had the disco track with Find My Way on there, and it kind of fit what I gradually realized was a New York thing. All the funk bands that we know are funk bands, like Fatback and Jimmy Castor and BT Express, they all kind of had to do some of that disco beat just to stay afloat. And that's not really what Dayton bands did. That's not what other bands did. But and Cameo came with that super stank funk and still managed to do some of that. They managed to do that. And I think It's Serious kind of was their manifesto about that. But they made their mark, and they were established right away with that record.
Very well, Captain Smirk.
Was an alternate for me, but good choice.
Yeah, alternate for me as well. Main pick for you, Calvin, was it?
Well, it's funny because I'm thinking albums. I wasn't thinking so much debuts, but I'll go with this. JB's Food for Thought.
Hey.
Okay.
This, an absolute monster. James was in the middle of course, a transition period, and of course, music was changing itself. He changed a little bit from the tightest bands I thought that he had, like in 67, 68, 69 or whatever. And then here comes a whole new kind of like just different thing. And I think Bootsy is only maybe on These Are the JBs. And I think, The Grunt, which was kind of like an Isley Brothers, Keep On Doing It kind of deal or whatever. But some of the stuff that's on there is just like ridiculous. Bless Blackness, of course, Hot Pants Road, which of course would be used on I think Fight the Power, Terminator X, Wine Spot, which has that NFL Films, Ed Sable, Steve Sable kind of thing. It's anything that you're looking for, Pastor P's. And the interesting thing about that, I remember Fred Wesley years ago telling me that he didn't like any of this stuff. He thought it was actually really rather comical, and he didn't think that stuff would ever be released. And I was saying that, man, this is like the best. He said, man, I know. And he said, man, if you can count 1, 2, 3, 4, I can teach you how to play everything that's actually on those JB's records or whatever. But food for thought for me is, that's my first one. Now you guys gonna make me work. I got to pull out some other stuff because I wasn't thinking debuts. I was just thinking top 5 funk albums. I wasn't even thinking debuts. But
we did that on the previous show. This is all debuts, so you better dig in there.
Okay.
But yeah, the JBs.
Yeah, why
he's under pressure. Under pressure.
That's cool. You got some JB in there because last time we missed on JB, so good to get that in there for sure.
Yeah.
Oh.
All right. Good pick, Calvin. Scott, what do you got for us on your first one?
Well, again, in the interest of being strategic, I'm gonna go ahead and I have so many cool things here, but I think I'm gonna stay. No, actually, I'm gonna just be eclectic, man. I want to start off with something that goes back to me being very, very young. My mom bought this album into the house. Most people, most funk scholars would never think of this album as a great funk debut, but I certainly do. And it's Earth, Wind, and Fire's very first self-titled album, Earth, Wind, and Fire. You put this bad boy on, man. I mean, Help Somebody is the first song, and you just got this great guitar and horns coming in, punching, a whole bunch of messages coming at you, vocals bouncing around. It's intense. Then Moment of Truth slows it down. It's a bad-ass drum track from Brother Maurice White. It's a march. Maurice loved marching bands. It's one of the things that inspired him when he was a kid. It's just like, just, oh my God, it's so funky. Next song is a ballad. That's what my mother bought the album for. It's called Love is Life. And then you got Fan the Fire, which is more of a psychedelic funk groove. Incredible. Come On Children is probably the one song that stayed in the band's set, even when they had moved from Warner Brothers, which is where they did this one, to Columbia Records. There's footage of them performing Come On Children at Cal Jam. Which was a major thing. They were one of the only them and Mother's Finest were one of the only black bands on that concert, which was like Aerosmith and all these other groups, just a serious rock festival. And but Come On Children, again, message tune that stayed in their set forever. This World Today was a mid-tempo message tune. And then they closed out with an incredible instrumental called Bad Tune. Ricky knows about Bad Tune, man. A kalimba feature for Maurice, and a very psychedelic, very cinematic kind of piece that starts with thunderclapping and oh man, it's just so funky. So this is funk before funk really started becoming a thing where you would talk about a funk band. It's an R&B band that was seriously funky and had a lot of messages that they wanted to convey. I love that album a lot. So many people that are Earth, Wind, and Fire fans and whatever fans, they just kind of that album never pops up in their top 5, and it is definitely in my top 5, right up there with All in All, Spirit, Gratitude, That's the Way, yeah, great record, a great debut to me.
Definitely.
Yeah, and
That's
if I And
70.
if I may add, that album is special too because Doug Karn and Donny Hathaway was really dealing with them around that time before they got into the transition. What was it from Sherry Scott to Helena Dixon? They were kind of experimental. And they were really more raw and more funkier than what they got a little bit later. I mean, it came together by the time they got the Way of the World. But yeah, I hear
Yeah,
you.
the other thing I would say is that yeah, they were self-contained. Three people primarily doing the writing. Sherry Scott, the female lead vocalist, but yes, Gene Carn was helping out. Donnie's not credited on that album. This is the debut album, but Doug and Gene Carn are credited kind of ambiguously as special things.
Donald Whitehead, then, right?
Oh yeah, Don Whitehead. Yeah, absolutely. I can just quickly run down the other people, and because with so
Another
many, I,
thing,
I don't I don't want to get it wrong. But Verdine is there. Verdine White, Wade Flemons, Don Whitehead, Sherry Scott, Michael Beale. So unforgotten, unsung. Okay, talk about unsung. A great guitar player.
and the
Phillard Williams percussion, and then the horn section was Chester Washington, Alex Thomas, and my very, very good buddy Leslie Drayton, who actually did the horn arrangements for that record.
and that came with a poster, and they had already mastered the craft of adding little 30-second ditties after songs, and the way they were doing on Columbia, and they have a whole little after bad tunes. So Maurice was already messing with the dials.
Yeah, and there's not so much ditties on that record. There's strange little cultural weirdnesses, which is kind of more goes back to Rotary Connection, which was a band that also greatly influenced Maurice. And on later records, those interludes would be a lot more instrumental and musical. But on there, it was almost like some Black theater commentary type stuff. It's strange, usually if you're going to put them in the mix on a DJ show, you kind of skip and get right to the tune. Great record, though. Great record.
All right. Nice pick. Proto-funk, right?
Huh?
Proto-funk, in a way.
Proto-funk, Bob.
Yeah. Yeah. Fan the Fire. Love Fan the Fire.
Oh.
Hey, I'm surprised, especially considering who's on this panel, that we made it to my first one without someone else grabbing it. So, Graham Central Station, the first one.
Yes, sir.
So, Larry left Sly in 72 and 73. 74, he came out with this. First one. Unbelievable record. I mean, the depth of soul and funk on this record is amazing. The vocals, the keyboards, of course, Larry, Chocolate on the vocals, and it's that down tempo, super thick, super spiritual, super gospel funk that you just can't help but just sway to and get lost in. These tracks like, of course, Hair, the beginning of Hair. Oh my gosh. Every time I hear it, my eyes roll back in my head, You start doing the air bass, right?
Yes, sir.
And tell me what it is.
That's my jam.
Ghetto.
Heavy.
Good Lord, man. The vocals on this, to me, are as strong, the group vocals, as like what Parliament would do. Just incredible. Introduced us to the funk box for a lot of us, especially the way Chocolate does it and talks about it.
Mm-hmm.
And Can You Handle It, of course, was the hit. Kind of a quirky song, showed the, kind of quirky fun side of the band. And it laid the groundwork. I can't believe that they also came out with a second record in the same year.
Oh, yeah. Larry had been stockpiling.
Yeah, I think that was
Why wouldn't you let him get no cuts? So he stockpiled.
I think there was some delays in that thing coming because they, like I said, they had the second album ready to go. And I was real surprised. One day I did a set of all album cuts, and I was really surprised that Hair was never a single.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, wait a minute, that's a killer classic all-timer jam. What do you mean it was never a single? Not even later in the, sometimes they'll reprise a record just to try to cash in. But they just kept it moving right then. And who knows what Warner Brothers was thinking. At least they got to make their albums. And
Well, hey, Scott's pick and my pick were both on Warner Brothers records, and Warner Brothers was really scrambled. They didn't really know what to do with black music. They were just trying to jump in. They didn't really get their act together with black music until later. They had lucked up with Charles Wright, but yeah, they Warner Brothers struggled for a while. And the last thing I wanted to add about Hair is Stanley Clarke, another incredible bass player, did a cover of Hair on his album 1, 2, 3 to the Bass, I believe, and that's pretty smoking too. So people should definitely check for that.
What?
every time I
Can You
see,
Handle It was the only single, Ricky.
huh?
They only did one single, Can You Handle It? That's the only one they put out.
And they had to move on.
Yeah.
Every time I've seen Stanley Clarke, he ends his show with "Thank you for letting me be myself," which is more Larry,
Yes,
right? More respect.
correct and Brown.
Doing.
Well, thank you guys for letting me get that one.
Guys, I gotta go dig through albums, man. But I'm still ready though.
Cool. Let's circle back to Ricky. What do you got for us on the second pick?
Going back to Warner Brothers here. Hello.
Woo, woo.
And,
Hallelujah.
yeah, I remember going to the record store, picking this up, and I didn't know if I was allowed to buy this record because I read it was so nasty on the radio at that time. I was just like, wait, do I have permission to buy this? I couldn't get past Psychotic Bump School for a real long time. But I used to listen to the radio. I was saying it last time, just to hear Stretching Out and Tear the Roof Off the Sucker on the radio on KDIA, Lucky 13, and tape that, right, on my little box. But when I finally started buying albums, this is one of the first ones that I got. And like I said, Psychotic Bump School turned me out. And I'd Rather Be With You, of course, and then Vanish in Our Sleep. It just sort of hypnotized. It keeps you hypnotized until the next time you play the record. And it was Bootsy. I mean, it was Bootsy. I mean, come on, it was Bootsy. So it set things to a whole other level. And it was like he could do anything he wanted because Parliament was doing the heavy lifting and doing the radio play and doing the tours and doing the promotional kind of hard work. And it just seemed like he could just play in the playpen and do what he wanted to. I don't know if that is in the contract that way, but as a consumer, that's how it felt. It's like, Funkadelic doing the grind, Parliament handling all the promotional stuff, and this guy is just playing in the sun in the sandbox.
I don't know.
Yeah.
If you remember, Ricky, they came up here twice in '76. The first time they didn't have the ship, and it was Ronnie Laws and Pressure, Bootsy's Rubber Band, Parliament, Funkadelic. And matter of fact, they came to the old MB Mall. Remember T's Wowsy Records?
Yeah.
George and them actually came. It was George, Jerome. Matter of fact, George had the look like on the back of the clones of Dr. Funkenstein, the short hair type of deal. It was like about 4 or 5 of them that came through there, and it was during the whole Stretching Out kind of thing, Lots of memories with that album, man.
That album, I mean, just when he says hallelujah, just the start of it was just like something dropped from space. I mean, it was so innovative and different and distinctive. It was just unbelievable how fully formed that whole concept was.
Yeah, he had the Bootsy concept. He had the Casper concept. He had
pipe lying around somewhere like the old mothership. I mean, did somebody have that? That's a heck of a ride.
Oh man. Well, I know that space base got stolen. It was terrible. Somebody stole his original space base. That's what he called it, and that was tragic for Boot, man. But yeah, we talked a little bit about this on the last episode that Bootsy became the face, really, of that whole P-Funk movement because Parliament and Funkadelic were just sprawling groups of mugs, and sometimes you wouldn't even know George from whoever else was in there. So he got to be the rock star, love doll. Baby Bobby was comical, but he was also the sex symbol of the P-Funk, and all of that. And I have to say, man, the song that most people never talk about, it is an anthem for me on that album. It is so important. That's another point of view. I'm not going to go into it, because it was your pick, Ricky. But I implore the audience to go back, listen to that. I have actually transcribed all the lyrics to that. There's a powerful message there, and I did get to tell Bootsy how much that song meant to me because, wow, another point of view.
Where's off of your style? Yeah, I felt the same way. I could had to just own it. Like, whoa, this is all by itself, and it's not on the best of. So I was like, why you leave that out?
They be missing. They be going for the hit funk. And I mean that because that's the other thing about Parliament Records and things in the P Funk universe. There's the hits and all that, but all the mythology and all of the thought process and concepts behind what they're doing are usually more in the album tracks, and then the hit would be something that's kind of the release, But there's those album cuts that aren't quite as funky or radio friendly funky that actually give you the cerebral aspects of where George and everybody was coming from. And of course, George had his hand all up in Bootsy's debut. I mean, I think he's a co-writer on several of the tunes.
I gotta say one thing about that before we move on too is that it was so deep that for me, deeper than deep, you know, I so many times, I don't know if this was like this for you, Ricky, but I'd go back to that album and a different song would pop out as my favorite. It was so good that I would alternate like different favorites at different times.
And you that would be the joy of it. And you could just take the energy in a different way. Oh, I'm feeling kind of slow and low down here. Let me see what this physical love is all about. Boom, boom, boom. And he could just take it. Bootsy could grab you. Just took. So I have mad respect for what he did to really put the colors in that P-Funk, like you were saying, Scott. It was just too much. It was you sort of open this door and here's this whole kaleidoscope of things going on, and I don't want to say it made sense because psychotic bump school, not everybody could even say that. But it had a bunch of concept, and it was for me, it was totally accessible because it was kids. It was kid stuff, even though it was nasty and on the one.
He's always been cartoonish, though. That's always been, I think, the thing that got us all. Always had a cartoon vibe about him,
Yeah, and even on the second album, it starts off. We got the little kid, Bootsy, the superstar. It's like his appeal was kids, women, Funketeers, everybody. Incredible.
All right, we got to keep it moving. Ricky, great pick, man. I love that one. Calvin, what'd you dig up for us?
Yeah, y'all cats making me work. I'll go with the shirt that the brother got on. He made one.
I ain't mad at you. It's not in my picks. I just wore it as a shirt.
You know what's interesting? Now, I do have to be very honest here. This is the first, everybody on the panel knows this, but for the benefit of those who are at home or watching, it's his Motown debut, but the first album that I actually caught was this. Even back then I knew, for those you may not know, this is called The Great White Cane. They were signed to MGM Line, the subsidiary. Matter of fact, they were there at the same time at the Silvers. And Rick was coming down that same kind of line as Funkadelic was with Maggot Brain. There's a track on there called Mother Nature, but that, for the benefit of the Motown debut, we'll go with Come and Get It. Hollywood, really, to be honest, Sexy Lady is like nasty. I mean, just Sexy Lady, Mary Jane, You and I. And the interesting thing about when this album dropped, everybody here knows this, but for the benefit of those who are at home, this was out at the same time that Confunction had out Shake and Dance with Me. Foxy had out Get Off. It was in other words, it was some heat that was out there, but this album kind of blew everything else like really out of the water. And it wasn't so much the the band that would come later, like with Nate Hughes and all those guys, it was like the local Buffalo guys. Then when he got to LA, then basically Ollie Brown and other people would go in and kind of, put some stuff on top of it. But to me, one of the funkiest debuts that you'll ever be able, and on those funk festivals, Rick was like fire. He was deadly, back then at the funk festivals for those who didn't go, monster.
Absolutely. I was going to say that about Bootsy too. I mean, Bootsy's first performance at the Los Angeles Funk Festival at the Memorial Coliseum, I mean, that's gone down in history. I mean, I think there's bootleg CDs of his set from that first album. I think he did almost the whole album. He didn't have much else to do. So I think he did about at least more than half of that album. And Rick James was no joke as well.
Yeah. Hey, Scott, when you get a chance, we need to come back, not telling you what to do at your show, but the Funk Fest and that particular time period, because there's some stuff that he's bringing up with Bootsy that I really want to go into, but for the sake of where we at, I can't go into. But this could get real deep, and he kind of opened the door for it, and I hope it's something that you would consider. And if you do, please bring me back for that one.
All right. Yeah. Making a note and definitely open to topics for future shows. I saw Bootsy in '78 at the Monster Rock show at the Forum. I've never seen a tighter band. And saw Rick around '80 in Long Beach and at the LA Forum. He was unbelievable too.
Bootsy was tight. He was from the school of James Brown, so he was still really keeping everything on the one. It was tight, and then he could be as crazy as he wanted to be. But like you said, that band, man, woo!
And
Bootsy's rubber band. The first three records were rubber band, not Bootsy.
And vocally,
rubber band.
Bone and Peanut, they were doing the work. Basically, 4 people on that first tour from that first album that Ricky just put up. Sounds like 4 people,
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
On that, Calvin, on that Rick James record, I just wish that opener was longer. I love the opener too.
Yeah, the Stone City Band opener. Yeah, that is nasty. Yeah.
Stone City High, is that what it was, or something like that? Yeah.
Right.
Uh-huh.
And Stone City Bye. And I talked a little bit in the last episode about when I interviewed Rick. He told me a great story about Come Get It, and basically You and I. But so that's just a teaser. If you missed the first episode, go back, because I told a story that Rick told me about You and I. That's really the bomb.
Yeah. All right, Calvin. Good pick, man. Way to scramble. Got a good one.
Y'all making me work, man.
Scott, what do you got next, man?
Oh, okay. Here you go.
Come on, y'all.
That I had this. I had this in the chamber, Scott. I had it in the chamber.
It. Okay. E.T. Express, out of nowhere. This group, and I will, full disclosure, I just did a liner note essay on the definitive CD reissue of this album. It took way too long for that to happen. But shout out to Jeremy Holiday. It's his birthday today, and he is the proprietor of Iconoclastic Records. And we did the definitive CD version. But this is the OG vinyl. I call these guys the denimed down proselytizers. Every song, or so many of the songs, were message oriented in their titles. Everything good to you ain't always good for you. Mental telepathy. Once you get it, if it don't turn you on, you ought to leave it alone, and all that stuff. This album was just incredible. And in doing the liner note essay, I found out so many things. I interviewed all the surviving members, except for one who's kind of hard to find. But what was I going to say? Do it till you're satisfied. Oh, man. Oh, Frankie Crocker, WBLS, was so knocked out by this entire album. He would play the whole album, just put the album on and play it from beginning to end. And that's like definitely some unheard of stuff. These guys came out of Brooklyn, incredible band. They had paid their dues in bands of other names, playing locally, doing their thing. They got a big hit with Do It Till You're Satisfied, the title track. Funky, so sexy. The lead female vocalist, she didn't participate on it vocally because her father would really, give her a hard time. It was you couldn't do that. But it's funny. I just saw footage of her on the midnight special. By the time they were performing the song, she got involved. But it's just an amazing album, and people, DJs, and everybody that know this record. I mean, there's also "Do You Like It," which is an incredibly funky piece. "This House Is Smoking," which is almost like an afterthought at the end of the record. Some crazy, some duo of dudes get the credit for writing that song. They're not band members and they're not anybody that was really affiliated with the whole situation. But these are songs that have been heavily sampled in hip hop. They're funky. They're primarily instrumental. The vocals again were very straightforward, usually very message oriented. There's one ballad on here, and like I said, "Mental Telepathy" sounds like an Undisputed Truth tune. It's mystically psychedelic and thought provoking. But the two big hits were, like I said, "Do It Till You're Satisfied," and that went to #1, and they got another #1 on this little, Roadshow Scepter Records label, two #1s, and just unheard of on the R&B charts. And that song was "Express," which was it had a tagline, but it was an incredibly arranged instrumental. The arrangement was done by Randy Muller, who would go on to also work with Brass Construction and several other groups. But his big step out debut was "Express." Strings, flutes, horns, funky rhythm, and a really cool vocal. Hey man, this record I could go on and on about if we don't have time, but it is just one of those records that came out of the blue. Nobody saw it coming, and the whole album is funky. And the tragedy is that they made them go back in the studio and kind of rush release a follow up. They could have kept releasing singles off of this record. Follow-up album was called "Nonstop," and they had, a couple of the singles on there, but it wasn't on point. And that happens to so many of our black acts in R&B. They did the same thing to the Friends of Distinction, who had an incredible debut album called "Grazing." You can't see it, but it's up here.
Highly distinct, right? That's right.
They could have kept releasing singles off of that, and then they rushed and had to do, a sophomore record, RCA Records, more of a country label, not knowing what's up and rushing them, and it's sad. BT
If I
Express
may add to that Express album, if I may add, bro, that album was so powerful. People forget that Skin Tight, Jive Turkey was released as a single at the same time that "Do It Till You Satisfied" was out. "You Got the Love" and all of that stuff was out. I mean, some real powerful stuff.
Rufus and Shaka.
Yeah, but Express was unlike anything that was on the radio at that time.
Yeah, and that was a time period when you could have instrumental hits, and R&B was really, really good for having R&B instrumental singles that worked, or at least primarily instrumental. Like I said, that had that little chorus, "Here comes the Express," and it also inspired the JBs to come back with, it's not like the Express, but it's the JBs Monorail. I mean, everybody be biting off each other. I mean, oh my God. Yeah. Like Calvin said, there's a whole nother thing that can be discussed as far as band rivalries, concert rivalries, and
everybody elevated everybody else.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, Ricky.
I remember being a kid and getting the single to "Do It Till You're Satisfied" and having heard it on the radio, and then just discovering the full version on that album, where it breaks it down with the organ and all that and gets so deep. Unbelievable.
Sam Taylor on organ. He was not a band member, and shout out to Lawrence Worrell, because that was his granddad or something, and he's very, very proud of Sam's contributions. Great record. Last thing, I had the 45, and it must have been a promotional 45. This was before 12-inch singles, so you had the single version of "Do It Till You're Satisfied." When you flipped it over, it was the full album version on the 45. So that was the original 45, and I think later they discontinued that and put another B-side on so that you go buy the record. But I did have a 45. I don't have it to show you right now of "Do It Till You're Satisfied," and they actually called it. The album wasn't out yet, so they call it the special disco version.
Very cool. Well, great pick. You just undermined me right through that one. So good job. I got to pivot a little bit, and I'm going to pivot to the debut by, I couldn't find the actual cover. Hopefully one of you has it to hold up, but I do have this compilation. I'm going to go with the first one by Slave. If you can see the cover there.
You got me, man.
1977. This album, the track, I mean, mind blowing. The lead off to the record slide. I mean, when I first heard that, that's one of those ones that just changed my world. You know, it was so hard, so funky. The bass, the guitar, the bicycle horn quirkiness, you know, the lyrics. It just dominated that summer of 1977. And the album was strong too. I mean, it was kind of rough around the edges, but, you know, that's some of its charm, I think, too. And these guys were just teenagers when this came out, you know, right under the shadow of the Ohio Players, and introduced us, of course, there it is, to Mark Adams and Mark Hicks, and these guys would be funk heroes for a lot of us. And, you know, besides Slide and Son of Slide, of course, and Slide was almost 7 minutes, man, on the record. You and Me was a cool jam. Separated, I like the closer. And, you know, this record came out in 77 and produced by Jeff Dixon, who was with them through the concept album. And then I'm not sure what happened to him after that.
He was a radio guy.
That's right. He was a program director. Exactly. Yeah. And Jimmy Douglas was just doing the remixing on this one, who would later do more production. Record got to number 6 on the album chart, and just opened up the whole door. The last show, we talked about a lot of Slave, actually, but not the debut. And that's where it all started. And still, how fierce is Slide? I mean, it's still just unreal.
A whole lot of
I'm a really big fan of Screw Your Wig on Tight. I mean, you know, that's the second song on the album. And, you know, there's some really, Mr. Mark is playing some bad bass on there. There's some great horn arrangements on that. It's the crazy funk concept, you know, Screw Your Wig on Tight. Get down tonight. But it's funky.
And that's the one where I hear the real Ohio Players influence too in the background vocals on that one.
Yeah, Screw Your Wig on Tight. The falsetto.
Yeah.
Or background horn lines. It kept going. I mean, just way out, but they were way back in it. They weren't over the top like the JB horns on things. And even Party Hardy, that was my jam because it had so many little breaks in it. You know, like I kept thinking, playing side A, I was like, only a funk band could do this. A soul group trying to do funk could not come up with Screw Your Wig on Tight. They just couldn't do it.
No.
And that was when it started to really sink in, you know, because I was into the soul funk groups, Average White Band, Tower of Power. There were people doing great music. But when you come in from funk, then a whole new vista opens up.
Yeah. And Scott said that they were young, and most of them were. The key people were young, but there were a few people that were older. So you had multi-generational thing happening in that band. And I will share that, you know, I wrote the liner note essay for Stellar Funk, The Best of Slave, as well as the first CD reissue of that debut album by Slave. And I had the honor and pleasure and foresight of interviewing Mr. Mark Adams and Mark Drac Hicks, as well as Steve Washington, Starlina, all those people. So if you get those CDs, there's a lot of great stories about how that band came together, how they were just playing. They only did 2 shows before they did that album. One was like a prom or something, and the other one was something else. And they just decided to woodshed and work their asses off. They left from Ohio to go to New Jersey to stay at Steve Washington's parents' house or something. And all they did was grind and get down on that music until Jeff Dixon, you know, they sent something to him. And so that's why you've got a particularly strong debut there. Like Scott said, they did many better albums later, but for some guys that were, you know, just, you know, multi-generational, trying to do this stuff in the garage and whatever. That's how they got a really good debut album, Kitties, because they worked and shedded really hard and spent the time to deliver a great product.
And it went straight to the press, to press
Yeah.
video. It didn't have anybody sticking their nose in it saying, remix that or give us a disco version or whatever.
Yeah, they were on Cotillion, which was, who they have, Stacy Lattisaw and Sister Sledge, and
Mass production.
yeah. So, one slide took off, it was like, give us the album. We don't care. Give us the album. And even we talked last time, second album, Hardness of the World, kind of weak as well. But after that, they really got their stuff together and gave us about four albums, five albums.
I love Baby Sinister though. I love Baby Sinister on that Hardness of the World album.
Yeah.
Man.
I kind of like Volcano Rupture.
Was cool,
Yeah.
a little overlong, but but for the most part, no. I mean, you're talking about one or two songs out of what, 9? That ain't cool.
All right, we got to keep rolling. We got to keep rolling, guys. So now we're going to move on to Ricky for getting us going with his third pick.
Okay. Yeah, I was looking for the deluxe vinyl reissue that I bought for display, and it's somewhere in here, but I'll just have to go with the OG because it's all scratched up. But this was a game changer.
Oh man. Come on now.
Yeah.
There you go.
Old Soul Sister Funk.
Ooh.
Yeah, and this I don't know what to think of this stuff. It was but it was raw, raunchy rock, but it had, Larry Graham up in there. It had that East Bay funk that stank on there. So just as a consumer, it was blowing my mind. And then as I understood it more, and folks have gone back and they reissued all of Betty's stuff around 2006. I remember that. There was a big insert in the San Francisco Chronicle with the whole, it was like this pink dye around, and this is the main paper, not the pink section, the entertainment section. It was a whole thing with a whole layout of Betty's stuff. So somebody was really sprung on her at that point. But just coming up, you just heard the whispers and blah, 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 blah. And Betty played like, the black college circuit for a while, but she never got on Soul Train, never got on, never broke the barrier for the folks that are, sort of rabid soul radio consumers like myself. But so it was just word of mouth. It was just noise. And then, I made my way to this, and those boots kind of messed me up. I don't even know if you can call them boots.
Woo!
They just something else. And
boots, the shorts, hot pants. Good God.
On the back. It just kind of, it brought an attitude. I was too young when it came out. And so we were kind of accustomed to the sisters with the attitude with LaBelle and folks like that. And, some of the sisters in P-Funk, and especially when the Brides and Parlette, showed up and everything. And then when you kind of do your own crate digging archaeology, you're like, well, where did all that come from? And then you got to stop at Betty, because there really wasn't anybody before her doing that.
1973.
Yeah, on a label I've never got. Have you heard of Just Sunshine Records? That was a real obscure thing, and so it was a trip, because you sometimes your favorite artist is really packaged right, like Earth, Wind and Fire on Columbia. They gave them a package, but Betty had to really grind it out, and then she made incredible work that she made sure the work was packaged right at first, especially after that first album. The next one opened up and everything. But she changed the game. She was a total game changer. And, when we talk about a debut record, sometimes it's interesting for that artist to be in and change their path of their career. And sometimes a debut changes everything, changes the whole scene. And a few of them sneak up on people. So this kind of had to work its way in. I was about to say that about the Graham Central Station. It kind of had a slow burn. It was like, eating some brownies. It's like the heat doesn't come till later. But Betty Davis made her mark, and now people go back and they can't believe what the hell that record was. And that's why the vinyl, I think it's a gatefold and the whole thing. It's a real splashy thing. If you want to.
She was a cult artist when she came out. She was so alternative. She was so alternative to what sisters were doing. She did not get on most black radio stations. I mean, I'm sure Northern California was very supportive, but she was a pioneer. She was a groundbreaker. Her voice was harsh and her lyrics and stuff were crazy. Her attitude was wild. She's really more of a punk rock fusion diva, but she wasn't, they weren't playing her back to back with Aretha or Gladys or the Supremes or whatever other went. Even Millie Jackson or Betty Wright. I mean, Betty Davis, Miles Davis's second wife, was just something that was more occult, alternative flavor. And to your point, Ricky, like later in life, I mean, once she just got a whole cult following, and then I forget the name of the company that picked up her catalog to reissue the stuff on CD.
Hide in the
Closet, the Cellar, whatever that company is.
Hide in the Attic Records.
Yeah, thank you. There you go. They really did a beautiful job. Kudos to them of reissuing her stuff in very deluxe CD form first, and then vinyl. And I think they were also involved in the documentary that was done on Betty. Yeah, great pick, man. It was one of mine, but you beat me.
Anti-love song. Nothing like it.
Yeah. I think I actually saw Susanna Melvoin. It's not Wendy and Lisa, but Susanna with the family, I think, did a cover live, not on the albums, but they covered that song. One of the songs off of this record. If I'm in luck, I might get picked up. So I mean that those are people that found this record, found it in some used record bin, or somebody cool hipped them to it. I mean, it just Betty didn't get her props until decades later, but now she is a cult heroine.
Well, it didn't help that she was such a recluse too later on, and but yeah, great pick, Ricky. Thank you. Calvin, you're up, man.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm loving this because y'all making me work, and I do have like probably like a good 1,500 albums in here, some in storage. So it's like, okay, now you got to use your brain. Okay, let's see what you really, really know. Let's go with this one here.
Oh yes, we talked about this last week.
I didn't see the show.
We talked about this last week, but yeah, bring it.
Well, yeah, it's okay. It is a debut.
That's right.
Let me hit it from a different perspective. For the benefit of those in the audience, we all, the guys on the panel, of course, know they had been around working with Billy Preston and Bill Withers and just different people doing sessions. But when Look Out for Number One came out, it caught on like crazy. At that time, the Blackbirds had the City Life album. Monthly Connection was out. Candy Staten had Young Hearts Run Free. The Silvers had Showcase. It was a lot of heat that was actually out. But when Look Out for Number One, I'll Be Good to You came out as a single, hit right away. And of course, Get the Funk Out of My Face. We know what that is. Now, the interesting thing about this album is Herb Alpert hated it. He didn't like anything on the album except for Tomorrow. Quincy Jones talks about this in his book. He didn't think anything on the album sounded like anything with the exception of Tomorrow. And then once the album took off like it did, and we all know, the rest is history, he came back and had to apologize to Q and said, man, look, I was wrong. From here on out, just do what you do. Just do what you do. But definitely one of the funkiest when you start, and even some of the players they had on there, Harvey Mason, of course, one of the greatest drummers. You had Ernie Watts and just all these just different killers. That was actually
Dave Grusin.
Yeah. Dave Grusin. Then also Lightning, what is it? Thunder Thumbs, Lightning Licks. I remember seeing them do that at Kimball's East up here when they had kind of start to get back together because they weren't necessarily cohesively getting together. But to see them do that stuff live after seeing them back in the day was something special, and Get the Funk Out of My Face to this day. You can match that up with it's one of those songs like Thank You or Get It Together by James Brown or whatever. You put Get the Funk Out of My Face up against anything, Slide, whatever, it holds its own, especially the extended version. It holds its own.
Yeah,
I saw
yeah,
that show,
absolutely.
Kimball's. I saw that show, and there was another guitarist named Henderson.
Yeah.
Arlo?
I know him.
Some of the hard parts on Story Letter 23. I remember that. He's a cool guy.
Was that Marlo Henderson?
His name
He
is
lives out your way in Inglewood.
Oh no, that's somebody else. Marlo Henderson has passed away, but he goes back to
Oh, you talking about Marlo
Miles them changes
Jackson and all those different people. Talking about Marlo Henderson, guitar player?
Yeah, he was an
Oh man, he's on Off the Wall. He's on a gang of stuff. Yeah, he's back.
Yeah. Bases, Earth, Wind, and Fire. And they already had 2 guitar players. They still brought Marlon in for some stuff. And Steve Lukather.
Yeah.
But the only thing I'll add about look out for number 1 that I didn't say last time is that 2 of the songs from that album, A&M got the soundtrack rights for this crazy 76 movie called Mother Judson Speed with Bill Cosby, Raquel Welch, and Harvey Keitel. Like just crazy comedy. And Thunder and Thumbs and Lightning Licks was one of the songs. And I can't remember if it was Tomorrow or something else from that album was included on the soundtrack because it was just an A&M family project. But Quincy was always good because Quincy Jones produced this record, and he was really good with coming up. He had that crew, like I said, Dave Bruce and Ian Underwood, who did the synthesizer. Billy Cobham was playing timbales on Thunder and Thumbs and Lightning Licks, and that stuff worked so perfectly in the movie context, like a bass theme or whatever. It would just should be in the theater just grooving because Quincy, he came from film soundtrack. So the Brothers Johnson
would have been better, but that music was great.
No question. I was just dealing with Raquel. I didn't care about nothing else.
Same thing.
But the music.
And a quick footnote too, it's a little bit off subject, but I'll be real brief. For you Cameo fans, I remember a conversation I had with Larry Blackman many years ago. He said that actually his drum lessons, he got a lot of them from Billy Cobham. He said he used to catch the A train up, get his lessons, and then go back to work or whatever. And that's where you get a lot of that little sneaky stuff, the 2 different hi-hat patterns in between Shake Your Pants, and that's all stuff that he had got from Cobham. Yeah.
And the fact that he had like a 12-piece drum kit, for a funk.
Yeah.
Drums all over the place, Larry Blackman. This is pretty much what he's doing. Right. But he's got all these other drums.
That's awesome.
I didn't mean to mess you up, Scott.
Yeah, great pick, man. That album, even deep tracks, I really like Free and Single and The Devil. But yeah, nice.
And the Ladies.
Yeah. Thank you, Calvin. Mr. Galloway, what do you have?
Oh, it's my turn again. All right, I was trying to see, what am I at number? What are we, 3, 4? Where are we at?
3.
All right, this is the one that's going to be the most out for me. And I'm still surprised that one of my other ones is sitting here undone. But what y'all remember about this?
Ooh.
Trevor Horn.
What do y'all? I'm taking it to the 80s now. My God. Now, really, here's the thing now, because Ricky said, there was this, which was like a 12-inch EP. They didn't know what. When I was working in retail when this came out, and this is like technically the debut, but it wasn't a full album. It was like an EP 12-inch, and they were basically just dealing with one song and a whole bunch of weird little things. Art of Noise. They were known for experimenting and kind of debuting the Fairlight synthesizers, samples, and symphony strikes and all that. But this is the first full-fledged album. So if I'm cheating, I don't think so. This is the first album. And out of this album, we got, come on, beatbox. The first time I heard beatbox with all that heavy drums and the strikes and the voice, the marching, oh man, it was revolutionary. I was working in retail, man, and we had big, gigantic speakers. I worked at Foxtail Mall Warehouse Records, man, and we would play that bad boy. I can't tell you how many young rappers with their little Sir this and Sir that, embroidered into their jackets, coming in, boom, whack, whack, like, we want that art of noise. And they didn't know what it was. Art of noise, want that art, beatbox, want that, that's what we want. And these are like English synthesizer nerds, but they somehow, they just really captured the funk, man. Then you got Close to the Edit is on here, which was another amazingly funky track. Y'all know what I'm talking about, man. The video for that was insane, where they're busting up all the acoustic instruments, talking about this is going to be a new, this is the new thing. Oh my God. And then I really love The Time for Fear, which has a World War II element. It's a kind of like a taking you through the war. You got these samples of things like some Charlie Parker, and and then the one main beat that's just just cinematic stuff for the ears and the mind, man. And this other stuff was kind of a trip, How to Kill and Memento and Realization. They're short, like 1 minute, 2 minute pieces. Again, these were nerdy English cats, but the main songs and tracks just completely turned everybody on their ear and forget about it. And then Trevor Horn, very much involved with this. And Art of Noise did very well, but everybody pretty much knows that the apex of that sound came later with Yes, Owner of a Lonely Heart. And being able to bring all of that revolutionary stuff into a context of something that could be a hit, a hit record in a mainstream sense. This is underground funk from our friends across the pond. And the beautiful version of Moments in Love is not on here. The original version, which is very kind of robotic and, it has its own classicism to it. The beautiful version was a remix that came out as its own 12-inch and then was also included on the soundtrack to Pumping Iron 2, The Women. But that tune as well. All the freaky black folk, they had to get down to that 12-inch, really extra sexy percussion version of Moments in Love. But shout out to the Art of Noise. Three people. Let me see. Last thing I'll do is try to give them their name props. Oh my goodness. And those Ann Dudley. Hold on. Ann Dudley, Trevor Horn. Oh my goodness. And then Marley, Langan, and Jack Salick. I don't know all those two. Wonderful crew.
Didn't that lead to things like Let's Go All the Way and Fly Girl? And I mean, those had that sound too.
Techno funk. Yeah, but they were really the Fairlight. The Fairlight synthesizer is the thing that made this, and then the big ass beats that they came up with. It was its own thing. I will never forget those young black kids coming in, and they just wanted to break dance their asses off to that, whatever it was. Art of Noise. Where's it? Just want that Art of Noise. I'll never forget it.
What year were you working at Fox Hills Mall?
As soon as I turned 18. So that's 82 through maybe 83, 84. Then I became a buyer for the big warehouse records on the corner of La Brea and Rodeo Road. And from there, I went into radio. But the Fox Hills Mall, that was a special time. I got to experience 2 Christmases of Michael Jackson's Thriller dominating everything. I don't care. Men at Work, Cyndi Lauper, Springsteen, whatever was coming out, Thriller dominated for 2 Christmases. I always like to share that story.
I lived right by the mall in '87, so I was just wondering if we had any crossover.
Oh, no, I was gone by then. Yeah. 82 to about 84.
I probably met you then, Scott, because I was back in LA for Christmas of '83. It was the week before. It was the weekend of the Rams-Redskins playoff game. And if you worked there, you'll remember this. You guys had a big display for You Should Enough Bit Fish. And actually, I bought that album at that store at Fox. It was Ricky, it was a big display of You Should Enough Bit Fish albums all over the place. The poster with, featuring the hit single Nubian Nut. I bought
Yeah.
I bought it at your store.
Shout out to Michael White, who was the promotions person, publicity, retail, in the streets dude. Michael White. He handled all the Capitol stuff and the rock stuff too. I mean, he had all the Capitol Black stuff, Frankie Beverly, Freddie Jackson, George, all that. But he also, so he was probably the one responsible for that display. Michael White, that's my dude.
All right. Very interesting pick, Scott. Thank you for that. Hey, hold on. Hold everything for just a moment. We skipped my number 3 pick. And so I'm coming in, freezing everything, and giving you the pick that was overlooked the first time around. And that is number 3 for me, Brass Construction, their debut in 1975, produced and led by Jeff Muller, amazing arranger, keyboardist, who worked with, as we heard, BT Express and did the arrangements on Express and Do It Till You're Satisfied with the strings, and parlayed that into this deal with Brass Construction. Actually, the group had been around a while and then was renamed Brass Construction. They poured in all kinds of influences with that New York thing, of course, the heavy horns, but the funk, very deep, but also Latin influences, a little bit of disco, and island Caribbean type rhythm influences. It all came together. This album came out in 1975, and Movin' was a huge hit, which led off the album. It's like 8 minutes of just funk bomb, and incredible keyboard synth solo in the middle of it, and got myself together, and moving on. It just dominated the clubs, the airwaves, dominated everything. The group from Brooklyn, this was their first of many albums that would just be numerals. This was Brass Construction 1, and just 2, 3, 4, 5, they all followed. I think at some point they stopped doing that, but that was the thing for quite a while. And, most of their songs were pretty simple, just with chants, not a whole lot of lyrical depth. But at some point they did get a talent for, doing slow songs as well as the up-tempo. And this particular album had not only Moving on it, but also some other great tunes too, like, let me see the set list here. Changin' finished side 1, another 8-minute funk bomb. Great guitar in there. The guitar player, Joseph Arthur Wong, would add some of that, rock kind of flavored guitar. And Mickey Grudge on saxophone, Morris Price on percussion. The two of them have been on the Truth and Rhythm show. Side 2 had Love, which was more of a full song with vocals and lyrics and great keyboards again. Talking had a great flute solo. And Dance, at the end of it, over 9 minutes, had more guitar jamming. Only 6 songs on this album, but it sure made its impact. And Brass Construction would go on and influence many other groups with the heavy horns. And, what a fun cover. Fun cover and concept as well. So Randy Muller, of course, would go on, as we heard, and work with others like Sky. He really led that group, and, fantastic talent. So still with us, hoping to have him actually on the show someday. So Randy, if you're out there, where'd you get your funk from? Whatever, Truth and Rhythm, we want you. All right, that's it. Excuse the interjection. I had to get my number 3 in, but now we return to your regular programming with the rest of the fellas. So enjoy and thank you.
Sure.
Ricky, you got to get us rolling here on round 4.
Next? Oh,
Round 4.
all right. Oh man, I'm itching at some pee, but I don't want to miss this chance to do this.
Okay.
My brother brought this home in 1974. Didn't know who these fools were. Looked on outer space. I thought Machine Gun was a Jimi Hendrix track. So what was that about? And this thing is heavy on the instrumental, heavy on the clavinet. It wears it out. And I don't know how much of Mylan Williams was really on it. When they did Soul Train, Lionel is playing a lot of keyboards when they do Machine Gun there. And
Yeah, that was all Mylan, and he directed Lionel what to do.
okay, thing top to bottom is banging. Machine Gun, Young Girls Are My Weakness. I remember listening to that and said, man, when I get about 40 or 50, I think this song's gonna be real important to me. And I guess I was right. Okay.
That's a Clyde song.
I Feel
Walter
Sanctified.
Clyde Orange. He did all the nasty songs.
The bump, the longer version of the bump, because they put the shorter version on something else. Rapid Fire was just even wilder than Machine Gun to me. The assembly line was hella deep, something that Undisputed Truth might have done. Human Zoo, I hated it. I thought that was the worst song ever recorded in recorded music history. Being a teenager, I was like, how could they ruin this whole album? Gonna Blow Your Mind. They kind of get back to what they do with the all that heavy clavinet and jamming and singing. No ballads. Song in My Heart is kind of smooth, and Superman is a trip. No ballads, and they got this kind of like Kool and the Gang did for Wild and Peaceful, with mirror image of the color scheme and everything. And I couldn't believe that it just came out of nowhere. My brother was a keyboardist, and he had the clavinet and the Moog and the Fender Rhodes, and he would always talk about the intricacies of how to do things with them. And I don't know if he studied it or what, but I got access to it. And I remember some of y'all get on dustygroove.com and order some records from them. You guys done that?
Yeah.
I used to do that a lot. And they had this listed, and it said, we have to issue an apology to Lionel Richie. We're sorry. All is forgiven. You actually played the real raw funk and not the corny ass ballads, blah, 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 blah. And they backtracked for all the put downs and of all the corniness of Lionel Richie over the years, because when they heard this, it bugged them out. And I understand. I understood that, but I came on this early on. My brother got this when it came out. And it's sort of, people didn't know the Commodores would go on to all that success and everything else. But if you go all the way back, they had some pretty strong albums, but this, I think, is pretty much still their best, all top to bottom.
They were road warriors, and they had opened up for the Jackson 5 for several tours. And they were very road seasoned, and Motown snatched them up. And they were sitting on Motown for a few years with only maybe a couple of singles that would come out and do nothing. And that Machine Gun was really something else. And Lionel, there's the Soul Train footage of him playing that. He's like playing a little thing, on the keyboard. But please, the one dude that's not here anymore is Mylan Williams. And a friend of mine, he was an amazing keyboard player. I mean, organ, clav, Rhodes, whatever you wish. He was something.
Passed on now, right?
Huh?
Mylan's passed on, right?
He's the only one. He's the one that has passed, and that is why there really cannot be another a real Commodores reunion. Not to mention the fact that Walter Clyde Orange has retired from stage, and Thomas has his own Commodores, and Ronald LaPret is in Auckland, New Zealand. And Ronald and Thomas are really close with Lionel, so they joined him on a Essence Fest, and that was pretty legendary for those three to all be together on one stage. But I just wanted to give Mylan Williams his props, that he was an unsung cat who contributed very much to the Commodores, particularly on the funk side of what they did.
Yeah. I discovered him with Slippery When Wet, and then went back to Machine Gun. But yeah, those were some great times when they were in that. They had that sound,
Yeah, those first 5 albums, man. And I also include Natural High. That's a very good album. After that, I was and they were my favorite back then. I liked them more than The Fire, more than Parliament. It was just 6 cats to focus on. And I knew what each one of them did. And I saw them in concert with the Brothers Johnson at the amphitheater and Rhythm Heritage. What a triple feature. These are my first 5 concerts I've ever been to in my life, was that triple bill. And everybody was smoking on that show. Brothers Johnson had just dropped Right on Time, so they had 2 albums to deal with. Commodores were the headliner, and Rhythm Heritage was the opener because they were
Right on.
local. They're local studio cats. I don't think Rhythm Heritage did much performing, to my knowledge.
Ricky, good job on that one. Thank you. Calvin, what do you got number 4?
Oh yeah. Like I said, I'm being tested tonight. I'm gonna go with this. 3 + 3. Now, this is not the first Isley Brothers record, but it is the first one with the 3 brothers who had already been there on albums like Brother, 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 and some of those great early albums with Love the One You With and all that stuff. But this particular album had to be, it was 73 going into 74, because I'm trying to think. The Foster Silver's Misdemeanor, I Always Love My Mama, all that stuff was out literally at the same time. But man, the clavinet playing, you mentioned the clavinet earlier. Listen to the music. As bad as, you know, that lady, and of course Ernie Isley, it is what it is, whatever. But listen to the music, the remake. They put some gumball, they put the stank on it, and it was a whole nother thing. This album jammed for like a very, very long time. And much like what Scott was talking about, these guys were very self-contained outside of the drummer, I think George Moreland, who had been with them for a while, kind of doing stuff with them. But the Isley Brothers were, once they decided to get funky, starting with this album, it would lead into, of course, Live It Up and The Heat Is On and all that other kind of stuff. But this one right here really holds dear for me, because like I say, it was a matter of fact too. And speaking on Soul Train, we had, you know, you guys were talking about Soul Train. When they introduced the brothers on that show, it was really, really a big deal. And I don't know if you guys remember watching the original broadcast, but they actually played Who's That Lady, the long version that Let Ernie Get Loose. Now it was tracked, but for us, it was really, really a big deal during that time, because, you know, there was 2 or 3 channels. There was no music videos or nothing like that. So Soul Train, you know, Midnight Special, that stuff was like really all we had. And that album brings back a lot of memories. And the other thing, the Isley Brothers live during that time, they were trying to figure it out, because one side of it was this and then one side of it was that. But to me, it came together with this album, you know, one of my favorites for sure.
I had it in my stack basically because it was the beginning of the 3 + 3 era, so that would make it a kind of a debut, because of course Isley Brothers have been around
I hate to be cheap. Okay.
over a decade before that.
Right.
And those brothers, the young cats, had played on some of the previous records.
Right.
But we cannot say that that's the album where the funk began, because It's Your Thing,
no, for sure.
and Layaway and so many funky things that they had before
that.
that.
Album had Keep On Doing and all that stuff, man. I mean, yeah, no, for sure. But since y'all said debut,
I remember the way they
I feel like I feel like I'm cheating a little bit, but I have to kind of throw it in there, man.
No, that's why I had it in my stack.
That's a monumental
debut of the 6.
That's a monumental release. I mean, it introduced Ernie's playing to everybody too. I mean, just unbelievable. So great pick, Calvin. Thank you, man. Got to keep it moving. Scott, what do you got for number 4?
You know, I'm just gonna do this one because I don't know if I should be, but I just, I thought I was gonna come out with this first because I just knew one of y'all was gonna come with this. Come on, man, Steve Arrington, Hall of Fame, one of the badasses debut album. I was letting y'all have it, but I couldn't and we're on number 4 now. So anyway, first thing we got from this is actually at the tail end of the album. It was a 12-inch called Way Out. And then, we got Nobody Can Be You But You. What a message. How funky. What a message. Badass band. You Meet My Approval, album track, sexiness, Mac to the ladies. Strange, soft and hard, and forget about it when I just say weak at the knees. I mean, how much funk do you want? And they had the ballad funk, Last Night, Night Before. Steve Arrington, incredible vocalist, incredible drummer, songwriter, band leader, and all these cats, Charles Carter, Buddy Hankerson, Roger Parker, drummer extraordinaire, who took over the drums so Steve could come up front, Sam Carter, Bruce Bootsy, Gary Jackson, Arthur Rames on guitar, and please let us not forget that the unsung guitarist on Weak at the Knees was Boo,
The dude from the Tonight Show.
Evan Eubanks.
Yeah.
Evan Eubanks and
That's cool trivia right there.
it's short
Yeah.
and sweet right there, man. I was trying to let y'all have it, but I just went ahead and took it. That's my number 4.
And I thought that song should have been nominated for Best Supporting Actor in that NWA movie, because
Hell yeah.
they was
Straight out
playing
of
it the whole time.
Yeah.
That album almost made my 5 that for the last show. That's how strong that one is.
Yeah. Great debut. He could never top it. And that happens with a lot of people. If they have a really strong debut, they just can't top it. He's had a lot of great music. That's my boy, my friend.
I'm still waiting for volume 2.
Right, well, yeah, Positive Power. I think that's what that was supposed to be.
I was in the 15 rounds. That was my jam.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. All right. So my number 4, radio debut, Ray
Nice.
Parker Jr.
Nice.
So Jack and Jill was the lead single and hit. That was a turnoff to me. And I was like, it wasn't my thing at all. But then I started hearing some tracks from the album, and man, it's loaded with just deep funk. Was a Ray fan from, way back with, all the great studio stuff he did with Rufus. You got the Love and stuff with Herbie Hancock, and just amazing, all the Detroit stuff he did. 15 years old, he was playing with some of the best musicians and singers ever. But this record had hard funk, like Is This a Love Thing? Just got that rubbery kind of sound, and You Need This to Satisfy That. They came hard. Also, Me, like, the shortest title ever, but like jamming seriously hard. It's like a rockin' funk, and it's got Ray soloing in it too. And then the instrumental that it closes with, Get Down, is fire. You know? And man, they had like a lot of fun background voices going on and like different kinds of things like that. And Ray learned his lessons well and rolled it out on that one. First 2 radio records I was real high on, and then the funk started to kind of fade into the horizon. But this record also had, of course, Vincent Bonham, Arnell Carmichael, Jerry Knight, Ollie Brown on drums, Charles Fearing on guitars, and Wobble Watson also on guitars. So, radio.
Yeah. So many people slept on the funk of that record because the hit was Jack and Jill, and because it was on Arista Records. Clive Davis was all about them crossover hits. And that's why radio only got really 2 opportunities to do records that had as much funk on them as they did. And the general public doesn't really know those because, like you said, you weren't into Jack and Jill. Ladies like that, and ladies would be the ones that had the record because a lot of dudes weren't really checking for that. Are they going to buy Bootsy or are they going to buy Ray Parker? They're going to go buy Bootsy. But yeah, I discovered the funk on those radio albums after the fact because I assumed that the whole album was going to be, like Jack and Jill. And he also had Honey, I'm Rich on there, which was kind of in between. Da, 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 Honey, I'm Rich. Do, do, do. It's a nice tune, but,
Slightly better than Jack and Jill, but yeah.
Yeah, but the funk didn't make it to the radio. So most people didn't know how funky Ray was until the third album he got for those who like the groove.
One Nation Under Groove Revisited.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. That's a whole nother
it's bad though. It's bad.
Oh yeah. No, the Ray Parker
did some work with
snatchings are there's a whole show in there.
Ray Parker did Spider with Herbie Hancock. That's when I knew he had. I was concerned that he would have washed it out like everybody else was when Kool and the Gang was sort of getting neutered. They just weren't bringing it after a while. So like you, Scott, it took me a while to circle back to the whole radio thing. I had a few singles for those who like to groove, things like that.
Yeah. Swamp Rat for me on Herbie Hancock's Secrets. That's where Ray and Wawa together. Go back and Swamp Rat. That's some vicious,
Yeah.
vicious.
All right. Well, let's keep it rolling for our final round. Ricky, what do you got for 5?
Okay, this is a tough one because there's a lot of P-Funk debuts we haven't dealt with, but I'm gonna keep throwing people sideways.
Ooh,
Herbie.
Black.
No Herbie. Headhunters, no Herbie.
Beyond Herbie, because Blackbird does all the atmospheric tones and melodies and things to hold everything together. This has God Made Me Funky, which is one of the early hip hop legendary breakbeats.
Yeah.
Features Paul Jackson on the bass and the vocals, and just that wicked that opening beat with Mike Clark in full effect.
Mike Clark.
And Blackbird doing the licks, and Paul Jackson is, maybe my favorite bass player outside of Bootsy and Larry. He does other things, and he can thump without trying to thump. And so he was all over this. The Pointer Sisters are on this doing God Made Me Funky. It just goes way out, and then Music is sort of a condensed version of Watermelon Man that we heard on the other thing. To Here and Now, which is just sick, just completely sick. And Benny Maupin loses his mind, but the grooves that Paul Jackson does, nobody can do them. You can't just get somebody to do them. And because Scott, I asked you about that 50th anniversary of the Headhunters show, and
Yeah,
I was like, I love the guy who had to fill in, but doing Paul Jackson, they can't.
Marcus filled in. Marcus Miller played
I
bass
know.
for.
Yeah, but to do some of they didn't do this band stuff anyway.
No, they just did Headhunters and Thrust stuff.
I do remember there's an album where Herbie Hancock does a thing with Jaco Pastorius, and Jaco tries to do some of those Headhunter funk, and he's not. That's not his thing. We just leave it there. But see, people don't realize that Paul Jackson's on the sort of real advanced level that he was. And this has If You Got It, You'll Get It. It has Daffy Dance. It has some wicked stuff. And when people want to know, you were talking about Swamp Rat, how the funk and the jazz, where do they meet at the top? I give them this. Okay.
Yeah. And that Jaco piece was 4 a.m. on Herbie's Mr. Hands album. And it's an incredible piece. Herbie had several bass players on that record: Paul, Byron Miller, Jaco, and I think there's even something with Ron Carter on that record. It was just a bunch of different songs, different concepts.
And so
but yeah,
are still touring. It's just Mike and Bill Summers, and somebody else might circle back in. But this was the beginning of an era that a lot of us, when we first heard Chameleon, it was like, this is 50 years ahead of its time. And so now, 50 years in, this is, now people are finally starting to figure this stuff out. And so
and it was cool that Herbie stepped aside and let them do that, because he's always going in his own direction. So I said, y'all keep that going. I'm going over here.
I would like to know more of the story of that, because Herbie doesn't talk about that much in his book. And there's a book about the Headhunters album, and it just doesn't necessarily go where this should be going. And Blackbird is there. He could be a part of a reunion.
Who played keys on that record?
Nobody.
There's no keys on that record?
Benny Maupin, Bill Summers, Mike Clark, Paul Jackson, Blackbird, Joyce Jackson, flute, Zach Doof, djembe, Baba on bass drum, Harvey Mason percussion. No keyboardist is listed.
Okay.
So, actually, acoustic piano, Benny Maupin, sax solo, bass clarinet, tenor saxophone, acoustic piano, and vocals. So
that must have been like one track on the album that was less funky.
All we got, because they were doing their thing, and they had this full, complete sound without it. And so it'd be interesting to see if they said, "No, Herbie, we got this," or if he said, y'all, it's on you, I'm busy, or however it went down. It was a one-of-a-kind thing, although there is a live performance at Winterland that these Headhunters do that you can find on YouTube here and there. I'd like to see a nice remastered CD of that thing.
Yeah, and there's a midnight special where he introduced them. Herbie introduced them and Blackbird's out there, and and that's why I thought there was a keyboardist, because it seemed like there was maybe Herbie was playing on it or something.
I wonder if they had to
But
promise to Herbie they wouldn't use another keyboard player so they could do the record, you know?
there you go. That's another possibility. We'll have to find out the 411 on that.
It's too late, yes.
Way to finish strong, Ricky. Man, thank you for that. Calvin, what do you got for number 5?
This one was tough because I had to think about 3 different albums. I thought about the first Chic album, which I love, and I love the whole idea of them playing funk, but the record label hung a disco thing on them. But that first album, there's a lot of funk on that album. I thought about Lakeside Shot of Love because I'm very close with that one, but I decided to go with this. Go with The Time. And do you want
Next one, then?
You want me to back off so you can do it? It doesn't matter to me because, like I said, it was 3 albums. But this album, I love for different reasons because the whole thing with Prince, basically, I guess it was my understanding. Y'all can correct me if I'm wrong. Basically, it was Morris and Prince, basically the whole album. And I've always thought, like with Prince in particular, I don't look at him like I do Parliament Funkadelic or the rest of the family like that. But those Time records that he kind of put together, I've always looked at him as saying that if I was to play funk, this is exactly what I would sound like. And that first album would Get It Up. When I first heard it, I was like, damn. And then Cool took me to a whole nother place. And then The Stick, which was very, very underrated. And just very underrated. And at that time, I was Confunction. I was on that Confunction 7 album, like Heart Lovers and If You're in Need and all that. And all of a sudden, when I heard this, I was just like, kind of like, wow. Some of Prince's best ever work on the under. I mean, he has a lot of great stuff. And like I say, I don't mean to be disrespectful to his fans and stuff like that, but I've never looked at him. I've looked at him as being funky, but not necessarily a funk artist. But that first Time album, I can't deny it. I can't deny it. And it was the most different sounding stuff because even what he was doing during that time, if you remember, the Jones Girls had out At Peace with Woman, I think, Dance Turning with Romance. The Gap Band had Gap Band 3. I think the Fantastic Voyage album was out, Fatback Hot Box. Was it Cameo Filmy? It was a bunch of like fire that was out, but then this dropped and there was nothing on the radio that I heard that sounded anything like what I was hearing from the Time. And I'll take a quote from a good friend of mine, Tim Kinley. We were talking about the Time one day, and I'll be very brief because I know we got to get out of here. And I didn't know that he was a fan of the Time like I was. And he says, Calvin, the Time was the group that I thought that was going to really, really, after Parliament kind of went to the side, he said the Time was the group that I thought that was going to really keep it going for us or whatever. But, you know, for whatever reason, Prince contractually and stuff like that. But that first Time album, I'll never forget how I felt when it first came out. Very special for me.
3 bangers and then 2 ballads and then that weird ass After High School, man. But,
you notice I didn't say anything about it.
yeah, The Stick, Get It Up, and Cool. Come on, man. And Scott's criteria was 3 tunes that were funky. Well, there you go.
Cool was so ahead of its time. It took me a little while it was a grower for me. Then once I got it, man, it was so badass.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, Scott.
And they were great in concert. I mean, you know, Prince did the record, but the Time debuted that. Well, not debut, but when they played LA, they played the Roxy. I was there, and Jesse, Jelly Bean, Monty, Morris, Terry. Who am I missing? Rome. They killed it. They killed it. Jimmy Jam and Terry. Yes, so we had six brothers, and then Jerome, Mayer, and the percussion. Nah, man, they were tight. And Jimmy Jam constantly tells the story of how he rode them so hard. Like, you know, nah, Jimmy, you can't just be playing the part. You got to dance. Or what's your other hand doing? Oh, double the bass line with Terry. The Time's first concerts, and man, and Prince always said, he created a monster because they kicked his ass on the on the second tour. It was like there were markets he wouldn't even let them play with him because they were straight funk, and Prince had to have all that other pop and stuff. And at the time was not playing, and it did become a rivalry because Prince had ridden them so hard that they felt like, okay, whatever, brother, whatever. Let's take when we come up super time or something else.
Yeah. Great pick, Calvin. As you can see, I'm on board with that one. I owe you payback on that one. Scott, number 5, what do you got?
Woo!
Come on, man. Norman Whitfield, we talked about him a little bit last time, and created or shepherded a band to fulfill his visions of a movie soundtrack double album for this weird comedy picture with George Carlin, Richard Pryor, Franklin Jai, oh my goodness, Tracy Reed, and so many other people. And the group was unknown, group of musicians. They had played behind Edwin Starr and done some stuff in Vegas, but he put them together. Gwen Dickey up front on the lead vocals. And again, when this first, when they put the single "Car Wash" out 2 months or a month, one of them, a month or two before the movie even came out. So it was pre-promotion for this thing, and the record took off so tough. Look at this. I mean, they say this is a promotional copy, but this I remember them selling this in black neighborhood record stores because people couldn't wait to get their hands on the album that had Car Wash on it with all that funky bass by LaQuint Duke Job and the hand claps that became such a thing. Then the album finally comes out officially, and this is what it looked like. And you got the sticker. This Car Wash, got to believe in something, and I want to get next to you. Three smash songs on there. Of course, Pointer Sisters did Got to Believe in Something, and I want to get next to you as a ballad. But please do not sleep on the cornucopia of funk that was on this record. And I just had a conversation with somebody earlier today talking about, I was talking to my friend Wendy Smith Brunei. She's in the Honeycomb now, and they've, done some touring, or not touring, but some of these R&B cruises. And Rolls Royce, they really don't. And this is a message for Rolls Royce. Please revisit this record in your concert. They be out there doing Montel Jordan, This Is How You Do It, all these cover tunes, and they sleep on their own funk. So for all of us who saw this movie and remember, there is also Daddy Rich, Put Your Money Where Your Mouth Is, Zigzag. Oh my God.
Sunrise.
My glasses are failing me in this late hour. I'm Going Down, ballad funk came off of this. Yo-Yo, Sunrise, an amazing instrumental. Water, which was really funky. And then Doing What Comes Naturally and Keep On Keeping On. Am I forgetting anything? Zigzag, You're on My Mind. Born to Love You, Stop It. No, man, this album was amazing. Introduction to Rolls Royce. And with all these pictures, there's still no picture. The band was not even official yet. These are all movie stills in here. Nobody knew what this band looked like, really. I mean, they did Soul Train and everything, but they didn't even get on their own first album until In Full Bloom, I think, was whatever the second album.
That was a great album too. Yeah.
In Full Bloom. So an incredible soundtrack, an incredible debut for Rolls Royce. And much respect, and I just wish that the band would respect that history and include more of those songs in their set now, because people remember them from the movie, they remember them from the album. That album was the soundtrack for everybody's card games, everybody's barbecue, everybody's graduation, whatever. That album with the full complexity of instrumentals and songs and ballads and funk it was a soundtrack outside of the movie. It was a soundtrack of the hood when it came.
That's a great
Yeah.
choice, and I thought about that too. And it's funny that the record came together before the band came together.
Yeah,
You know, they had the stamp. Everybody knew who Rolls Royce was, even if we didn't know who they were. But you
yeah.
know, oh, that's Rolls Royce. That's the track, and so they held it down. And
Shout out to all of them.
Hey,
LaQuint Duke Job on bass, and Henry Garner on drums, and Kenny Copeland trumpet lead vocals, Quinn Dickey vocals.
Scott, don't let me have a moment with this because Scott done really got started something. He's so spot on. They also did this. Rolls
Right.
Royce did the music to Which Way Is Up, which is one of the funkiest things. Stop playing Keep On Trucking Rolls Royce and play your music. This is one of
Yes.
the funkiest pieces you ever want to hear. And God rest Leonard Jackson, who I'm sure some of you guys know. He was Rolls Royce's chief engineer, Norman Whitfield's right-hand man, and he engineered a lot of that album as well as In Full Bloom. He's worked with Lakeside, and he just passed of cancer maybe a couple of years ago or so. So I just want to make sure that I put that out there as well. But Scott, yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you, man.
Yeah, and also Wawa Watson, secret. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Guitarist Wawa Watson was also very instrumental in that Car Wash record. You know, he and Kenji Brown. Kenji was the guitarist of the band, but all the really extra funky special effects on that album were Wawa. Wawa is very prominently featured on the Car Wash.
Yeah, that had such a cultural impact at the time. I mean, and Car Wash, I wasn't even that nuts about that song or the single, but the other tracks in that album, phenomenal.
Yes,
number one pop single, Car Wash.
number one, debut
Oh.
number one.
Another thing I just thought about, Leonard told me before he passed that when they were actually recording that, MCA did not want Rolls Royce to do it. They wanted Smokey to sing I Want to Get Next to You. This came directly from Leonard's mouth to my ears. They wanted MCA wanted Smokey Robinson to sing I Want to Get Next to You. Norman was like, look, you know what I can do. Just I make money. Just leave me alone. Let me do what I do. And, you know, that song was almost Smokey Robinson had it not been for Norman Whitfield.
You messing with Norman's money, because how much would it have cost? He wasn't even on. Smokey's on Motown, MCA's over here. So if you're going to have Smokey, you're going to be
He
messing with
left
Norman.
Motown. He left Motown so he could get paid for his own songs.
There you go.
All right, great pick, Scott.
Thank you.
Let's go, man. All right, so I'm going to finish it up here for us, and I only have a tiny picture of it, but it's Mtume's first album.
Ooh.
He had a couple of records on an independent label before this one, but this one came out in 78, and it was called Kiss This World Goodbye.
That's the band, Mtume band.
The band, yeah, first one on
He did
Epic.
solo records before that.
Right.
On Black Jazz, I think.
Yeah. So this was first major for the band, and hella funky. Just Funnin' was a single, which definitely has the P-Funk vibe. The title track is Rockin' Funk. It also had a version of The Closer I Get to You that, of course, was a big hit for Roberta Flack and Donny Hathaway. Funky Constellation is more like real hard rockin' funk with a Bernie Worrell kind of synth. Day of the Reagan is an amazing instrumental, hard rockin', super funky. And this introduced us also to Hiawatha, who came in on this one. Incredible singer. Of course, went on to do Juicy Fruit and the other hits with Mtume. Reggie Lucas on guitar. People don't know, he could shred, and he does it on this record,
Unsung.
Hubert Eves III doing the keyboards. The horns are uncredited, but they're good as well. So this is one that you got to really look for and dig a little bit, but it's worth it. It only came out in '93 on the R&B chart at that time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Of course, Mtume worked with, and Lucas worked with Miles Davis, early 70s, and then went on to produce Steffi Mills, Phyllis Hyman. Reggie Lucas went on to work with Madonna. So these are heavy hitters, and this, is sort of like the genesis of some of that. So, yeah.
Very nice.
Both of
Yeah,
them.
I think it rocked out in New York, but I don't think that Mtume had an impact in LA till maybe the second or third album. I didn't hear that record out here.
He was big in New York because he had a radio show on the weekends, and he would be talking about the business and the industry and stuff like that. But his music was straight club R&B, or just radio friendly jazz, R&B jazz. I always think of Jamaica funk. Who was that guy?
Tom
Tom
Brown.
Brown.
So he was in that school. He was sort of the godfather of that type of scene, really.
Because Don Blackman was there. And then also the other thing with Mtume, he was really, really responsible for a lot of the scoring and the way that music thing went down with New York Undercover. He was really behind the scenes on it. And this is something that's not talked about. That's why that show comes off the way that it does. It's not as easy as people think to like score a television show or whatever, but he, besides him being one of the greatest percussion players who's ever played,
He was a huge P-Funk fan. You can definitely hear it on this.
Right.
I think Bootsy's on one of those albums.
There you go.
Oh, he's got it. All right. Beautiful.
Go pull it out. Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah, it's got the band on there.
Yeah.
It's Taiwatha and Mtume and Lucas and the rest. So, all right. Thank you, guys.
Locksmith
so I'm gonna-
Howard King on the drums. Don't forget my drummer, man. And Funk Child Hubert Eves. And Basil Farrington on the bass. Along with Reggie Lucas and yeah.
Okay, well,
Indeed.
we don't have time, but here's some more debuts. The Funkadelic debut,
Okay.
Jimmy Castor Bunch debut,
Oh yeah.
the debut, Bride's debut,
Yeah. Yeah.
Eddie Hazel's debut, and I had the deluxe of Osmium, which was the first Parliament record.
Yeah.
Which
That was pretty out there. I had to have Eric Burden in War. This is an amazing.
Well, I might be
Also
cheating,
heard-
renting them because it got a couple of extra tracks on it, but
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the Parliament.
Yeah.
double album with the extras
yeah.
Prince.
and Prince.
Wasn't that much funk on For You now? Come on, Scott, you reaching.
Yeah.
Power, good idea,
Top Power. Yeah.
Big Grease.
man. It's so
Power,
much-
power. Well, what are you holding up, Scott?
Maze.
Oh, I did the liner notes for that. Hello. That's the two albums together. First album and
Yeah.
Golden Time and Day.
Yeah.
You did
Right
those?
on. Is that George? Oh yeah, the first George Clinton solo record.
Yeah.
Hit Draft. That's my cut on that.
Hey, that wraps up our official choices for the 5 greatest funk album debuts of all time. Scott, Ricky, and Calvin, any final thoughts you'd like to add, or do you want to plug something? Let's go around robin with Calvin. Anything you want to plug or final thought?
I'm just going to say thank you guys. I'm glad just to be in status quo company with A. Scott because I've watched him from afar and never had the pleasure of really interacting with him. I've known Ricky over 30 years or whatever. So, and not only that, I love this forum really quick because it allowed me to think outside the box because I could have I had all the Brides in those albums, but I said, no, let me think I'm up here with some real brains or whatever. And I figured you have a sophisticated audience, so I said, well, okay, let me use my brain and let me not go with the usual suspects or whatever. And I knew Ricky in the end was going to do what he did anyway, which was like, okay, you guys, this is what y'all want to see. Here it is. So I said, I'll leave that for the funk author.
Right on. Scott, any final thoughts, or you want to mention your website?
Yeah, if anybody interested in learning more about what I am doing and I'm going to do, it is very simply ascottgalloway.net. And please drop by. It has a lot of my old history in it, but definitely intending to do some new stuff. And again, this is my second go around with Fine and this Jam Fans thing, and it's a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying it. I love the brotherhood. Ricky and Scott and I did it before. Calvin, you were the bomb. You came in and you freestyled and you still kicked ass. So this is wonderful. It's just a wonderful thing. I sincerely hope that the people pick up on it and and have fun, and enjoy what we have to say and share about the music.
Right on. Ricky, final thoughts? A little plug for History of Funk?
Oh, History of Funk, Friday nights, 10 p.m., kpfa.org, kpfa.org. Still smoking. It's this is a great concept, and I'm happy to share with y'all and learn and groove. And Scott, I have to tell you, this will probably be a theme set for a show down the road, and I'll borrow it, give you credit, because it made me think of all these debut records that all these people did. We mentioned a few, and and they all deserve a deep dive. That was the thing. This funk, it's just got so many layers, so much depth. Yeah, there's the pop hits, but come on now, we're in it because of how much meat is on the bones. So,
Right.
thanks for the opportunity, and can't wait for the next one.
Right on. Well, with that, I hope all the viewers and listeners enjoyed this edition of Jam Fans Forum. Check out the description of this video for links to the albums we discussed. Don't forget to like, comment, and share the video, as well as subscribe to the channel. Drop your own personal choices down in the comments. Let us know what your picks are for the top funk debut albums of all time. And also tell us what other categories you might want to see on this show. Next time around, we'll reveal picks for the top 5 live funk albums of all time. For now, as always, this is Scott Dr. Jake Skullfine saying, keep on vibrating to the rhythm of the one.